Hi, I'm Peter Hill. I'm an advocate with the Citizen Advocacy South Australia program. I'm here to talk about advocacy and beyond. Is it possible that all protégés' needs can be met? Is it possible? Well, perhaps so. But in a society that values the successful and not the vulnerable, it is very difficult. Citizen advocacy programs are continually challenged to find the most vulnerable people in the community. To suggest that a protégé's needs can be met will be equal to that old-time statement, all pigs are prepared and primed to fly. Most of us have struggled at times to meet our own needs. In spite of this, we may find ourselves at a point where a protégé's major pervasive need is met and satisfied. We may ask, so what happens now? What is my role? This presentation does in no way suggest that advocacy action has an end, nor does it suggest that it should come at some time move on to another level in being a lifelong relationship. It is written out of my own experience, realising that my role as an advocate had changed, how I recognised this and how I adjusted to it and moved on. I remember it clearly as if it was yesterday. I was at a meeting back in 2001 where the speaker got up and described a man who was struggling with family issues, service providers and government departments. The speaker went on to say that this person had trouble coping with the demands placed upon him and would often act in an angry way. He added that this person, Andrew, my protégé, had a disability and a partner also had a disability. He asked if anyone could help him, and so I approached the speaker afterwards and wanted to discover more about Andrew. This is how I started my association with citizen advocacy in being a citizen advocate. I met with Patrick Ruthven in an old converted house that became an office on the other side of town. It certainly wasn't impressive to start with. I found it was not the corporate identity as one might think citizen advocacy would be. But I found that it was a grassroots movement addressing a dire need. I began orientation, learning about the need for advocacy, the plight of the vulnerable, and ways advocacy can be effective in different roles that may work in supporting Andrew. Though ready for the task, having completed orientation and keen to get cracking, I soon realised I was not prepared for the task ahead. At first it was confusing and I have to admit, a bit overwhelming. The initial call for advocacy included supporting Andrew and navigating a legal process with him as the state was set on removing 2 of his children. Though his partner had support and advocacy through independent advocacy, at the time Andrew had none. At this time, I had to take time off work to attend family court meetings. Fortunately, my work was very supportive about it. During one of these court sessions, I stood alongside Andrew and the judge looked at me, puzzled, and said, "Are you representing Andrew?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Are you his legal representative?" I replied, "No, I'm a citizen advocate." Instantly, I felt I was under the pump as everyone was looking at me. "I don't have your name on the court list, so who are you and what is a citizen advocate?" I said, "I am Peter Hill. I'm not legally trained or anything like that, but I'm here as a citizen in support of Andrew and I'm not paid to be here." The Citizen Advocacy Program is a program that supports citizens to have an advocate. He said, "That's amazing. I've never heard anything like that at all." And then he thanked me for standing with Andrew and proceeded to quiz the Crown, that was known back then as FASE. The Crown apologised for not completing all their findings and they were waiting for a report from one of their contractors, a psychiatrist I believe, and wanted to defer to another date. He said, "What? You want another deferment? You have not only wasted my time, but also the time of Peter and Andrew who've taken time out of their day to be here." It's creepy. "Okay, have your deferment." and he gave a date and disappeared out the back of the chamber in a huff. Although it was a bit puzzling at the time, I was hoping we would have that judge again. I soon found out you rarely get the same judge twice. And so he moved on, preparing for the next date. There were further meetings with FAYs, officials and contracted professionals, which were emotionally difficult and at times quite harrowing. It soon became apparent that Families SA were pushing for an 18-year order, and the children will be in care for that time. It became clear that we needed to engage the services of a lawyer for Andrew as well. The Citizen Advocacy Office in South Australia found us an advocate associate who got us a family lawyer who was willing to take legal aid funding, and so we found the lawyer we need. In a series of meetings where I assisted in helping Andrew understand the issues set before him, I had written letters stating Andrew's wishes and his devotion to his children. It was a long process, including a number of reviews and legal hurdles. There were at times glimpses of hope and shattering moments of disappointment. Eventually the date was set, the day came, we got a heads up that FAYs were ready to make their move. To cut a long story short, on that day, the 18-year order began. With 4 hours a fortnight access, over time that reduced to 1 hour a month, which made it difficult to keep up visits as the children felt confused and estranged. It made it also difficult for Andrew to attend these meetings. I did attend when I could to encourage Andrew, but I can see it wasn't easy to make that connection with the family again, and inevitably the accesses stopped. As things progressed slowly over time, there was a decrease in advocacy action. Then suddenly, things did not work out with his partner. After a series of events, he moved to the other side of Adelaide with a new partner and proceeded to get on with his life. Most of the issues regarding family and service providers have either been resolved or have moved on. Things changed so quickly. No longer did I have regular contact. No longer was I involved in regular advocacy for my protege. I felt literally lost and somewhat powerless. I thought, well, maybe I have to take a break and see what happens. Or maybe this is it. Maybe it's time to move on. As each opportunity presented itself, I started meeting again with Andrew and his new partner. I began to realise that significant changes were occurring in our relationship, and it became more than just an advocacy match. A lifelong relationship, perhaps. Not that anyone can artificially produce or create an enduring relationship. It is, of course, dependent on the desire to do so and the nature of the people in that relationship. I've discovered that in my advocacy relationship that over time it grew into something greater, a lifelong relationship. I'll highlight 4 indicators in hope that it may help others recognise this change. First one is diminished or changed advocacy role. The distance between us made it difficult to keep in contact. However, there was a chance for the relationship to evolve. I found myself resisting the call to drop everything and attend to situations as I did when he was living close. It meant getting inventive about tackling issues. For example, my protege had a specific problem with his landlord and the way his landlord spoke and threatened his partner, imposing a lot of stupid rules on her. I made a few phone calls for my protege and got in touch with the Rentals Tribunal, who mediated in the issue, and all was fixed suddenly. I realised that not only had the advocacy role had diminished, but it had changed in that role and was more of a guidance rather than hands-on role. Initiation of contact is the second point I'd like to make. A few years ago, I'd been in contact with my protege at least once a week, and almost of the contact was initiated by Andrew. But now I find myself calling my protege more often than he called me. What's happening here? Am I developing some kind of anxiety disorder? This was not like me at all. what was happening. This is where the Citizen Advocacy Office helped me out. Patrick challenged me by saying, maybe your protege is in a good place now. Maybe he feels he can stand by himself. Then I realised that I needed to give my protege some room and to call him only occasionally to ask, is there anything I can do? Is there any way I can help? But instead ask something like, hey, do you want to meet up for lunch? Third point is equilibrium of relationship. The realisation that my protege was in a good place and standing meant that the advocacy role was no longer the centre of our relationship, that this has profoundly changed in the way we relate to each other. We talk about everything now and enjoy each other's company freely and easily. Our relationship is on a peer level. I consider him a great friend and companion. The fourth point is about reciprocation of concern and care. At the Citizen Advocacy Summer Picnic that year, something amazing happened. I came to the picnic with my son. Anyone knows my son, that he's passionate about things and he lives it, and it exudes out of him. I've been encouraging my son to go back to school, but this has fallen on deaf ears. I let the issue ride over the Christmas break. After a game of cricket, my son went to walk with my protege. My son told him he wasn't sure what he should do this year. He told my protege that I had been encouraging him to go back to school. I was gobsmacked to hear that my protege told my son, maybe you should listen to Dad. He only wants good things for you. On that day, my son decided he was going back to school. My protege was able to reciprocate concern and care for me and my family, and it was the most wonderful thing. Today, Andrew has repartnered with the mother of his children and has some connection with his children now the 18-year-old order has been lifted. It is difficult, but for most part, he's happy. He enjoys gardening and bike riding, of which I have promised that I will join him when I retire. We laugh and kid around, and we like the same music. This may seem an easy and wonderful story. However, it still has its concerns. My protege is still carrying some luggage from the past, as we all do. It can at any moment turn and unravel where the dire need for advocacy comes back to the fore, and it might be as messy as things were back before. But I know, no matter how messy things will be, our relationship now has the strength to survive, endure, and even thrive. As I said before, I do in no way suggest that advocacy action has an end, nor do I suggest that at some time that it move on to another level in being an enduring relationship. But if your advocacy relationship changes and you recognise some of these indicators, be prepared to embrace and celebrate a lifelong relationship. Thank you.